allegations of about 9 billion in fraud across social services in Minnesota, including Medicaid, food assistance, housing, and childcare, with most cases linked to Somali community.
And what was really going on in Minnesota was that a lady named Amy Block, founder of Feeding Our Future, she's been charged and already going to go to jail for $250 million, but she basically ran a scheme along with other people in Minnesota, which defrauded Minnesota of up to probably $9 billion, at least $1 billion in the aim of social services. And most of these social services went to Somalis. Now, we're not here to target Somalis, but what's going on in Minnesota is that there's a lot of Somali refugees. So they had access to these services. And the paperwork has been shown. People have been charged for this. There was wholesale fraud. People were getting food stamps. People were getting daycare money. They were getting money to start daycares with empty buildings. So basically, it was a laundering of money, and the Minnesota community was being used to do that. And at the top of the pyramid was Amy Fraud and other nonprofit organizations in Minnesota. So the importance of this is that it's tied to ICE.
Yeah.
Most of the federal agents who were coming in there to find Somalis who were there illegally, under the rationale that there were a lot, whether you like it or not, it's documented now. There were a lot of people from Somalia who were part of defrauding the government of up to $9 billion. So ICE was there, whether you agree with ICE or not. This is not the right or wrong of ICE. They were there primarily to root out Somalians who were there illegally. Now, when we look at television and when we see all the protests against Trump and all the people getting shot and all the violence in Somalia, I said in Somalia, you might as well call it Somalia, in Minnesota, the white liberals will say, oh, you have no right to come here. You're just trying to control Minnesota. No, the ostensible reason, Trump probably has other reasons for being there, but the main reason on paper is because of that fraud. And if the liberal leadership in Minnesota hadn't enabled not just the Somalians, poor people who are white and black, to defraud the system of billions, Trump wouldn't have had an excuse to come in. And ostensibly, he was coming there because of illegal immigrants, not just Somalians. They're illegal immigrants from Europe, not from Europe, but because we know they're not going to target Europeans. Illegal immigrants from South Americans and from Somalia that were putting a pressure on the state to the tune of almost $9 billion, which is what we believe is going to be the end result. And this is even more ironic because just yesterday or 2 days ago, Ilhan, what's her name? Mohammed Ilhan?
Omar.
Ilhan Omar was saying that Trump is a killer. That standoff she had during his State of the Union address, she was going toe-to-toe with him, and she said that he's racistly targeting Somalians. No, he's not racistly targeting him. He's mentioning that the Somalian community is playing a big role in something that's up to $1 to $9 billion fraud. And the facts are that Feed Our Children, or the program, what's the name of the program, Feed? What's the name of the lady?
Feeding Our Future Alone.
That program itself, she profited off of $250 million off of it. So this is not targeting the Somalian community per se. What it's doing is saying that there are a lot of people within that community that are being used to defraud the government, and the federal government is going to have to investigate it. It's just the same as if you have drug violence in a black city in the U.S. The government's going to send people in there, agents and stuff, to investigate. Yes, they will be investigating black people because that's where the phenomenon is coming. Now, we know that overall, this problem, even with this defrauding of Minnesota, is not a problem of Somalians. It's a problem of corrupt leadership. In this case, the liberal white leadership in Minnesota. Now, we know, I'm not just pointing the finger at Democrats or liberals, because we know that the problem of war and other things in this country is a problem that deals with conservative leaders too. So, but what we're looking at, this is a problem of leadership in Minnesota. But what they're doing is they're using their citizens to say, oh, Trump is a dictator who's trying to come here. They're hiding behind their citizens to fight their liberal agenda, protecting them from defrauding the government of $9 billion. And I'm going to say this, it's not the Somalians who are defrauding the government. It's the white liberal leadership in Minnesota. What are your thoughts, Afolabi?
Yeah, you're absolutely right that playing the racism card here is basically delusional in my own estimation of the scale of the fraud is humongous. This is $9 billion we're talking about. This is not something that can be swept under the carpet. And all this happened under the watch of a government that has been lax and negligent. I mean, if you look at most of this thing, there's a disproportionate involvement of Somali household, especially when it comes to welfare. Here I have about 81% use, 89 with kids, yeah, 73% medic aids, and also autism, some autism figures. There's a fraud, in fact, that is linked to Far Hassan, $14 million on autism fraud. I mean, this is ridiculous. And then if you look at the fact that all they're asking for is investigations and scrutiny, how on earth does that mean racism? Every government has to be scrutinized. Everybody has to be held accountable. There's a reason why those monies were made available. And if they're not being used for the intended purpose, then people have to, people have to be arrested. People have to talk. Otherwise, if this continues, I mean, we could be talking about fraud in the scale of something in multiples of $9 billion. And then again, you look at, you begin to attack Donald Trump for saying that, oh, maybe he's racist and stuff. But if you look at what is happening here, it's obvious that the government of Minnesota has been very weak, or maybe they've been covering this up, or maybe they're even, assisting and profiting from it. And Omar Ilhan's defense is very, very weak because he points fingers at her. Her credibility now is in tatters because the Somali American representatives, our relationship with Trump appears to, basically shield, our allies over justice, this taxpayers funding. So this is not about racism. She can't play the racism card here. This is about hard facts. This is about scrutiny. This is about accountability and things being done the way they ought to be. So she can't defend this. There's no how. This is indefensible.
No. See, here's the problem. There's a refugee crisis, which goes back to American policy abroad. There's a refugee crisis in Minnesota because of the wars going on, which are funded usually by the Middle East and America. Okay, so it's put a stress on Minnesota's social services program. According to 2026 census and status data, 73 to 86% of Somali households in Minnesota use Medicaid. That's free healthcare, compared to 18% of native-born households. So what it is that we're not blaming them for being poor. You're poor because you're coming here as refugees and you need help. But this high participation rate made it the perfect environment for fraudsters to hide. So what it is that since that community is so poor, most of the services were going through them, and there were people within those services, people who are Somali,
that was taking advantage of it,
as well as people who are white Americans, or not just white Americans, people who were government officials and people who were running the programs. They were collectively doing fraud. The most fraudulent programs were housing stabilization services and autism therapy. Yeah. These were designed to be low barrier, which means anybody could have access. Yeah. This allowed new Somali-led nonprofits to build a state with almost zero oversight. So people within the community were billing the state with no oversight, getting millions. And it's very difficult to build up $1 billion to $9 billion worth of fraud. Yeah. So when Ilhan Omar calls Trump a bully, let's look at the facts. He sent ICE agents there to vet Somalis to make sure that they didn't lie on there. Most of these ICE agents are not men working with machine guns. They're people who do clerical work. And what they were doing was they were vetting all of the social services things that people filled out and see if anybody was lying. If you were lying, you would get in trouble. And if you didn't have your documentation properly to show that you had a green card or citizenship, you were deported. Now, we know that ICE has abused its power, but you can't attack them on that point of doing the proper investigative work. And if I were Ilhan Omar, and if I were the leadership of Minnesota, I would worry about $9 billion being defrauded within our city, because that's what's going to lead to more crime, because that type of money could have been used, diverted to other things like keeping neighborhoods safer, pumped into schools, pumped into valid things which build societies, not fraud. And can you talk a little bit? There's a scheme in which people from Somalia are actually sending money back home from these social service monies that are coming in. So that's money laundering. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I agree with you. And this Ilhan Omar cannot, if ICE decides to come in, there's nothing she can say, because she has lost credibility. And the reason is simple. Taxpayers' money, people that are paying taxes to fund this are going to be, are not going to be happy about this, because the people that are culpable are being shielded. by the likes of Ilhan, Omar. So allow justice, allow accountability. Taxpayers are going to be alienated. I mean, how would I feel if my money, I'm paying tax and my money is going into private pockets instead of funding this kind of initiatives? So there's nothing she can say here that can, cover, what is happening here. You prioritize facts over politics. Let them put politics aside. Allow investigations. People that are culpable should be accountable, basically. And if you look at this, other immigrant groups, this has happened with other immigrant groups in the US. They aided investigations. They allowed the government to wade in and do what they needed to do. The whole idea is reform. Let the system be reformed so that going forward, this kind of scandal doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and I'm going to end with this. See, this is a lot of money, $1 billion to $9 billion dollars, which was defrauded. There's no reason why Minnesota, the standards for giving out services to people are so loose that they could be defrauded by $9 billion. So what I'm saying is they need to tighten up their criteria before they give out social benefits to people. Make sure that they're not lying. Make sure you have oversight. That costs money too. Make sure there's proper oversight to make sure that people aren't defrauding the government. You can't just go somewhere and then they sign a check for you, because that's what leads to fraud. And I'm going to end by looking at the main facts of this case before we head out of here, so that you can just see what the scope of everything that's going on. Okay, so here's a summary. Amy Block. Now, she's the founder of Feeding Our Future, and she's a great example of this type of fraud that's going on. She used equity as a shield to steal $250 million. She has been charged federally and is waiting to go to jail. I don't hear anybody talking about her on the news. Nobody's mentioning her name. They're only mentioning Trump and how evil he is. 85 out of 98 defendants in the major cases are of Somali descent. Now, Ilhan Omar calls the federal surge bullying, but the Trump administration points to the $250 million in Medicaid funds they had to freeze just to get the state to stop the bleeding. They had to step in and put a freeze because the state was going to hell. This is being called the largest theft of taxpayer money in U.S. history, specifically because trusted community nonprofits were never audited. The highest theft in history.
So that's why
all I have to say.
Is negligence. Is negligence, basically. So what I think they need to do going forward, they must demonstrate they have a corrective action plan to ensure that vulnerable citizens who actually need healthcare and childcare are not permanently punished for the action of fraudsters.
Oh, yeah.
And I think...
And also, we shouldn't be targeting the Somali community either.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be targeting the Somali community either as well. And I feel that...
Just enforce the law. Just enforce the law.
Yeah, just enforce the law. This Scandinavian model that Minnesota is practicing, I think there should be a system overhaul. This system of high trust, low verification, welfare distribution. They need to put controls in place to ensure this kind of thing doesn't happen again, because the state must implement rigorous technology-driven auditing, to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen, because this is a common trend. Money is given out for aid.
Well, the liberals... See, the liberal idea is, don't ask questions. Let us help the poor. Let's just give money. Don't ask questions. It's racist to ask questions. Of course, the black person isn't stealing from us now. All right, so let's quickly pivot. Let's talk for 3 minutes about Iran.